I'm 32 years old, and I've spent most of my adult life learning how to be okay with being invisible. Or at least pretending to be, but nothing prepared me for what I saw that night on Christmas Eve. Snow was still clinging to the edges of my boots when I stepped into the living room of my parents' home. The scent of cinnamon and rosemary drifted from the kitchen, familiar, warm, almost enough to trick me into thinking this year would be different. Then I looked up. Right above the fireplace, in a glossy black frame, hung a large new family portrait. Professional, perfectly lit, smiling faces. My mother in her red holiday blazer. My dad doing that awkward half smile he always pulls in photos. And my sister Rachel, of course. Center stage, draped in beige cashmere, laughing like someone had just told a heartwarming joke. The kind of laughter you'd expect from someone who's never once been told no. But I wasn't there, not shoved to the edge, not out of frame. I wasn't blurred in the background. I was completely gone. It was a clean crop, intentional, tidy, like someone had taken the time to edit me out, erase every trace of my existence, and hang the result proudly for the world to see. No one said anything. No one even glanced in my direction. It was like they genuinely believed I wouldn't notice. Or worse, that I wouldn't care. Dinner's almost ready. My mom called out from the kitchen, her voice cheerful, like this was just any other holiday. I stood there for a few seconds, long enough to feel my stomach twist way it's in, but not long enough for anyone to ask if I was okay. And maybe that was the point. I hung up my coat in silence and walked into the kitchen, pretending not to notice the picture. Pretending it didn't hurt. Pretending I hadn't already screamed into a pillow 3 times this month. That was the moment something shifted. Not in them, in me. And I knew that this Christmas, I brought more than a gift. I brought the truth. And they weren't going to like what was inside the envelope I carried in my coat pocket. The kitchen was filled with all the right smells: rosemary chicken, sweet potatoes, cinnamon rolls just starting to brown in the oven. On the surface it looked like a postcard-perfect holiday, but underneath the warmth everything felt staged, polished, like a scene rehearsed too many times. Rachel stood by the island, swirling red wine in a crystal glass, her back perfectly straight, her voice just loud enough to carry. "You made it," she said, kissing the air near my cheek. "Not on it, God forbid we touch. So glad you could join us." Her tone made it sound like this was her house, like I was some distant cousin finally showing up out of obligation. I smiled. The kind of smile you give when you've already swallowed every scream. The kind that says, "I'm fine," even when your whole body knows you're not. So we sat down for dinner. My dad carved the roast like he was on a cooking show, grinning as if the camera was watching. My mom kept complimenting Rachel's skin, her outfit, her glow. It was all so familiar, so painfully predictable. No one asked me how I was doing. No one asked where I was living now or what I'd been working on. The only question I got was from my father, who said, "You still drive that little car," which in our family translates to, "We haven't checked in on your life in years, and we're hoping you'll offer some details so we can pretend to care." I didn't take the bait. Instead, I watched Rachel unwrap a small, elegant box, a vintage gold watch. "Oh my God," she gasped. "You guys, this is wow." My mom waved her hand dismissively. "It's not fancy." Which was a lie. I caught a glimpse of the receipt still folded beneath the tissue paper. The price tag was more than what I made in a week, and that's if I skipped groceries. And then it was my turn. My dad handed me a box wrapped in silver. I opened it to find a mug. A plain white mug with black letters that read, "Somebody's favorite daughter." They laughed. I didn't. Was it supposed to be ironic? Was it a joke? Or was that their version of honesty? I forced a chuckle and excused myself after dessert. My mom offered me the guest room. Not your room, not your old room, just the guest room. Bead sheets, one flickering lamp. The kind of room you assign to someone passing through. That's when I sat down on the bed and pulled out the envelope. Thick ivory paper. Embossed seal. I had planned to give it to them tomorrow, after the cinnamon rolls, after the charade. But something inside me had changed, and I wasn't going to wait anymore. They had given Rachel the spotlight, the house, the praise, the stories, and now the watch. They gave me a mug. But I had something much heavier in my hands, something they never saw coming. Lying there on the edge of that unfamiliar guest bed, I started thinking about all the times I had made excuses for them. All the moments I told myself I was just being sensitive, just imagining the imbalance. But the truth was it had always been this way. I remembered my 8th birthday. I had invited 6 friends over. I baked cupcakes myself. My mom forgot to pick up the pizza, so we ended up eating slices of cheddar cheese on saltines. The party ended early because Rachel had a dance recital the next day. "We'll make it up to you next year," they said. They never did. When I got into my dream college, they told me they were proud. Then they asked if I could defer a year so they could help Rachel build her art portfolio. I was 19, with a scholarship that covered most of the cost, asking for just a little help to cover the gap. My mom looked at me like I had asked to borrow her wedding ring. My dad said, "It's just tough timing, honey. We're still catching up from the bathroom remodel." That bathroom had heated floors and a bathtub with Bluetooth speakers. 2 months later, they bought Rachel a new car for her 18th birthday. White leather seats, custom stereo, a bow on top. She cried when they handed her the keys. "You're the best parents in the world," she said. I stood next to the recycling bin, holding a graduation card with a $20 bill and the words "You were going places" printed in sparkly letters. And you know what? I still left for college. I took 3 part-time jobs, slept 4 hours a night, ate too much instant ramen, graduated with honors, moved to a new city, started over from nothing. I never asked them for anything after that, and they never offered. When I got laid off 2 years ago, I didn't call. When I was sick and couldn't afford the medication, I didn't ask. When my apartment flooded and I lost half my furniture, I bought a used mattress off Craigslist and kept going. Meanwhile, Rachel was posting Instagram stories from Santorini. At some point, I stopped wondering if it was my fault. Maybe I wasn't harder to love. Maybe I was just easier to ignore. And they had gotten good at it. Really good. Really good. The guest room didn't feel like a room in my parents' house. It felt like a placeholder. A space meant for someone passing through. Beige walls. A dusty bookshelf with books no one read. One bedside lamp that flickered like it was tired of being useful. I sat on the edge of the bed, envelope in hand. The thick ivory paper felt heavier than it should have. I turned it over slowly, running my fingers across the seal. It wasn't just a document. It was proof. It was everything I wasn't supposed to know. Originally, I had planned to give it to them after the gifts were unwrapped, after the cinnamon rolls and the polite laughter. I'd imagined waiting for the performance to end before stepping in with a quiet truth. But that portrait changed everything. Seeing myself erased from that photo was like watching someone scrub your name off a gravestone. Not just forgotten, deleted. I thought of all the times I'd tried to earn my place in that house. By staying quiet, by being helpful, by not needing too much, and none of it had ever mattered. They didn't forget me. They removed me. And I couldn't ignore it anymore. So I sat in that flickering light, letting the silence wrap around me like a second skin, and I made a decision. Tomorrow I wouldn't wait. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't argue. I wouldn't cry. I would hand them the envelope, smile, and say, "Merry Christmas." And then I would watch the truth do what years of silence never could. A few months earlier, this all would have seemed impossible. Back then, I wasn't looking for anything, not a confrontation, not closure, not even attention. All I wanted was a document. I had gone to the county records office to request proof of residence for a job application. Just another piece of paper in a long list of requirements. But while I was waiting, I saw something, my name on a folder the clerk had briefly laid on the counter. It was attached to a property address I didn't recognize. At first, I assumed it was a mistake. Maybe someone with the same name. But curiosity can be a dangerous thing. I filed a request, then another. I searched public records, sent emails, made some carefully worded calls. The deeper I looked, the more tangled everything became. And at the center of it all was me. The property wasn't a mistake. It was a rental house in Old Breer, quiet neighborhood, modest place, but well kept. It had been owned by my grandfather, someone who passed away when I was in college. And according to the documents I found, he had left that house to me, sole beneficiary, full title. I stared at the will for hours the night I got it. I read it 3 times just to make sure it wasn't some legal puzzle I was misunderstanding. But no, it was clear, simple, final. Except I'd never been told. After he passed, my parents said there was nothing left, just a few keepsakes, some bills, and funeral expenses. They never mentioned a house, never showed me a will. They handled the estate quietly, swiftly, without ever including me. But the paper trail didn't lie. They had started collecting rent on the property less than 6 months after his funeral. The checks had been going to my father's account. The house had been maintained, renovated, painted without my knowledge or permission. And I recognized that house now. It was the one Rachel had used for a photo shoot last year. She'd posted pictures in front of it on Instagram, tagging a fake location to make it look like a boutique rental. At the time, I hadn't thought much of it. Now, I knew better. They used my name, my legal identity, my inheritance. They treated it like a forgotten file they could quietly exploit, assuming I'd never know the difference. But I knew now. And I wasn't going to let it slide, not anymore. This wasn't about the house. It wasn't even about the money. It was about the fact that they didn't just forget me, they used me. And that envelope in my coat pocket. It held every piece of proof they thought I'd never find. Christmas morning arrived like a scene from a catalog. Pine-scented candles flickered on the windowsills. My mother was plating scrambled eggs like she was prepping for a brunch spread in a lifestyle magazine. My dad scrolled through his phone at the table, still in slippers. Rachel, barefoot and flawless, sipped almond milk from a wine glass, talking about how stressful air travel had become. I stayed in the guest room longer than I needed to, not because I was tired, but because I wasn't ready to step into the performance just yet. Eventually, I walked into the kitchen. "Good morning," my mom said without looking up. "Hope you slept okay in the guest room." I replied, "The mattress has a personality." She laughed, assuming it was a joke. It wasn't. We went through the motions. Breakfast, coffee, holiday music humming faintly in the background. No one asked about my life, not where I lived, not what I did for work, not even if I was okay. But they listened intently as Rachel talked about her upcoming trip to Barcelona. "I'm just so lucky to have parents who support my dreams," she said, glowing like a golden child under spotlight. I nodded along, like a seat filler, at someone else's awards show. After breakfast, they gathered around the tree. Wrapping paper flew. Rachel unwrapped a designer tote bag, cream leather with gold accents. "You remembered," she squealed. My mom teared up. My dad beamed. No one noticed when I quietly reached into my coat pocket and placed the envelope on the table. 10 minutes later, my mother spotted it. She picked it up, squinting. "What's this?" she asked, more to the room than to anyone in particular. I didn't look up. I took another sip of coffee. "It's from me." My dad smiled like I'd handed them a sentimental card. "You didn't have to get us anything." "I know," I said. "I wanted to." That got their attention. My mom sat back down, holding the envelope like it might contain wedding invitations or bills. "Should we open it now?" I shrugged. "I'd rather you didn't." So, naturally, she opened it. She slid the papers free. My dad leaned over her shoulder. At first, there was only the quiet sound of paper rustling. Then came the stillness, thick, weighty. The kind of silence that isn't peaceful, but charged. Like the moment before a storm breaks. They flipped to the second page. Then the third. My sister leaned forward. "What is it?" No answer. She asked again, louder. "What's going on?" Still nothing. I set my mug down, stood slowly. "I figured it was time you knew," I said. My mom finally spoke, her voice quiet and flat. "What is this?" "That," I said, "is a copy of Grandpa's will." The performance was over. And the truth had taken center stage. My mom blinked hard, flipping back to the front page like she could somehow erase what she'd just read. "I've seen his will," she said. "We handled the estate." "No," I replied. "You handled what you told me was the estate. You never showed me the full will. You just said there were a few keepsakes and some money that went toward funeral expenses." My dad's hands were clenched now. His jaw tightened. "Where did you get this?" "Oh, I said casually. Public records, title searches, tax filings, archived emails." A very patient lawyer. Rachel was still staring at them, bewildered. "Wait, what rental property?" I turned to her. "The one in Old Briar. The one you used for that photo shoot last year. That house, it's mine. Grandpa left it to me. Sole beneficiary. Full ownership. Transferred by will." Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. My mom's voice shifted into that soft, overly cautious tone she used when trying to return something without a receipt. "Sweetheart, this isn't what it looks like." I smiled. "That's funny, because it looks like you used my name, my inheritance, and my legal rights to fund your lifestyle while telling me there was nothing left for me." My dad rubbed his temples like this entire conversation was giving him a migraine. "You always blow things out of proportion." That made me laugh. "Right, I'm dramatic. You cropped me out of a family portrait and committed inheritance fraud, but let's focus on my tone. Rachel finally snapped, "It's not fair. You didn't need it. You've always been the independent one." "Because I was told there was nothing to ask for," I said. "You made sure of that." And for once they had no reply. For a long moment no one said a word. My mom stared at the will like she was trying to make it vanish by sheer force of will. My dad kept shaking his head, muttering something under his breath that sounded like, "You don't understand the pressure we were under." Rachel sat frozen, still clutching the handles of her new designer tote like it was the only stable thing left in the room. I didn't need to argue. I didn't need them to admit anything. The truth was already laid bare, in black ink and notarized signatures. I slipped my coat on slowly, deliberately, calm. "You were always so far away," my mom said, her voice soft and defensive. "We didn't think you'd want the responsibility." "No," I said, buttoning the last snap on my coat. "I was far away because you made it very clear I wasn't welcome." No one tried to stop me. No one asked me to stay. Maybe part of them thought I was bluffing another silent tantrum they could ride out and forget. But I wasn't the same girl who used to beg for scraps of their attention. I walked to the door, pulled it open, and paused. The cold air outside felt cleaner than anything in that house. "You erased me from your photo," I said without turning around. I just returned the favor with the truth. And then I walked out into the snow without looking back. No dramatic exit. No screaming match. Just the sound of the wind, the soft crunch of ice beneath my boots, and the weight of knowing that for once I wasn't carrying their silence anymore. They would have to live with it now. And I was finally free. It's been 6 months since that Christmas. Since then, I've taken full legal ownership of the house in Old Briar. I visited it a week after the confrontation, walked through the rooms, touched the walls, opened every window. It felt surreal, claiming something that was always meant to be mine. I've decided not to sell it. Instead, I'm turning it into something new. A quiet, creative space. A place for women like me, forgotten daughters, overlooked sisters, background characters who need a room of their own. Somewhere they can breathe. I don't speak to my family anymore. There were a few emails. One voicemail from my dad saying, "Can we just talk?" But I didn't answer. Because I did talk. I talked with documents, with facts, with silence stronger than any scream. Some people think revenge means fire and fury. But sometimes the most powerful revenge is choosing not to play the part they wrote for you. I'm not invisible anymore. I'm not background noise. I'm the author now. If you've ever been made to feel small, erased, or forgotten, just know this: the story doesn't end where they stopped including you. It begins the moment you start telling your own truth. And if this story resonated with you, I hope you'll share it. Like, comment, let your voice be heard. Because someone out there needs to know they're not alone. You are not the problem. You are the page they tried to tear out and the chapter they could never rewrite. And that